So, 61 subscribers in 28 days. Thank you guys. It's so weird how sometimes the algorithm just takes an old video and blows it up. Most of those of you who are new just came from the Why Rhaenyra Should Not Be Queen video. And thank you so much for all of your support. You know when people come at you from both sides saying that you're unfairly supporting the other side, you've done something, right? Because everyone's shouting at you. It was so great to hear all of you guys' arguments, whether you agreed with me or not. It really made me happy, especially at a very busy time, because I've been finishing up my master's and I am now unemployed. Woo! But since we're already making controversial things, let's continue in the vein of that. As many of you have probably noticed, there's this new series called The Last of Us, produced by HBO, based on a video game. And I love The Last of Us. And I'm not one of the ones that love the first one, hate the second one. No, I love it all. I want more. Could I discuss part 2 at great length and parts that I might have done differently? Yes. But when a game makes you cry that many times during the story, I mean, that's worth something. So I was excited about the new TV show. I really thought it was going to be good. It looked good. And Neil Druckmann was on the project, and the producer has great respect and love for the source material, which in this day and age, so rare. Such a great boon. My reaction to the series has been mixed, and I think I really try to be fair to it, because I know that a lot of my reaction is just hung up on me loving the game. And I know that certain things have to be changed when you go from one medium to another. But I think when you go from one medium to another, you have to be very aware of what you're changing and why, and what the core idea of the source material is. This video will contain many spoilers because I can't really discuss the changes and why I think they were good or bad without discussing the source material. In this video, I will discuss whether the ultimate change of having Bill die with Frank and having the story be happy is a good or bad decision for the entire story. So let's just summarize the differences in what happens in the game versus what happens in the series. So in the game, you reach this area where Bill lives as Joel and Ellie. I'm pretty sure you're looking for information on Tommy, and in any case, you're looking for a battery so that you can drive toward Tommy, so that you can continue this journey. And then you run into Bill. At this point, Tess has just died, and Joel has been like, "We don't talk about Tess. In fact, we don't talk about anything." And Ellie has been like, "Oh, let's talk about Tess." And really sorry, unlike Ellie in the TV show, but that's another video. Ellie and Joel are just cautiously starting to work together because there's no longer the buffer of Tess present. Tess really manages Ellie a lot in the first part of the game. Like, Joel also interacts with her, and I think he interacts more with her than he does in the series, but still Tess is sort of this buffer between them because Joel doesn't really want to get into it with Ellie. But now they have to communicate and they have to work together. So tenuously, they're starting to just talk a bit more with each other, and I wouldn't call it softening up, but just they're going to have to move toward each other a little bit more than they have so far. So you're walking around in this area and then you meet Bill. And Bill is just super paranoid, and he immediately gets on Ellie's bad side, and Bill and Ellie are just going all the time. And this is the important part that we're going to come back to in this video. Joel goes, "Hey, settle down, calm down. Ellie, stop being such a brat. Stop antagonizing Bill and making things worse. Bill, just stop." She's a kid. Joel is forced into a position where he has to both put Ellie in her place, but also protect her from Bill. It's a very parental role. He both scolds her and protects her and encourages her. And meanwhile, Ellie and Bill also, they end up having some sort of grudging respect for each other by the end. So it's a very important and interesting development, because this is where we really see that while we've seen before that Ellie is tough as nails, she will like, she's a survivor. She has also been very sweet, but here comes Bill, and he's just too much. And Ellie does not take any of his bullshit. So she's swearing and she's trying to hit him with a pipe. She's really active in this part. But it makes sense that this is how she would react to a person like Bill, because he really is, like, hard to be around. Ultimately, this entire sequence leads up to the part where they're driving in the car, and Ellie has stolen some comics and some porn magazines from Bill. It's just this cute, fun scene where you can see that Joel is really warming up to her. I don't feel that part feels quite as organic in the TV show, because Tess just died, they go to Frank and Bill's, they find the car, and then they just drive, and then they hang out in the car. And it's kind of cute, but it's like, Tess just died. Like, chronologically. You didn't go through all of the stuff with Bill, so you just found a car, and now you're driving, and now you're hanging out. So I personally feel like that's a bit of an awkward shift. Like, there's not been any plot to move that shift. Most importantly, of course, Frank and Bill are not still together. Frank left Bill because he got tired of Bill just being set in his way, and he wanted to go find people, and he doesn't get very far before he gets bitten, and then he writes this whole letter where he's like, fuck you, Bill. It's very sad because you know that this hurt Bill. He tells Joel outright that you shouldn't get attached. He had a partner once, someone he had to take care of, and all that gets you is trouble. So it's the exact opposite of the Deus Ex Machina godly message he sends Joel from the beyond in the TV show, where he's like, we have to take care of people. So it's actually like the exact opposite. In the game, he affirms what Joel is feeling, and in the TV show, he's sort of like this moral guidance telling him where he could go. What's better? Well, they can both work, right? So I wouldn't say one is inherently better than the other. One just is how the source material is, and one is the exact opposite, which is what the TV show does. And then you have to decide as a viewer, would you like to watch this TV show in a way where you're going, well, this is a new spin on things, and I like to see things in a new way, or would you like to see the source material deepened and just made more congruent and stronger? I'm perhaps more of the first version, but I can see the appeal of the second. In the TV show, Frank and Bill find each other, and Bill is very much the way that you would expect him to be from the game. He's very paranoid, very protective, and very competent. He meets Frank, and Frank is so lovely, so sweet, and they have this romance. And I have to say that in that scene where they're having dinner and Frank goes to play on the piano, and they end up kissing, and Frank is like, go take a shower, and Bill is like, okay. I just loved it, and I loved how everything was communicated so beautifully between the lines, and it's like how they knew they were gay and the relief of finding someone to be with. It was very interesting and very well written. And then we see this whole development. I really expected, because of the way that things pan out in the game, where Frank leaves Bill, that that fight they have where Frank goes out on the road and he's like, the way that we show love to things is by treating them well, blah, 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 blah. I thought that this was sort of the beginning of the end, that Bill would continue to be in this way and Frank would eventually get enough of him, but instead, Bill is really nice, he gets better, he learns, and they end up having this very sweet relationship and this very good partnership with Joel and Tess. And eventually, Frank gets old and Bill decides to die with him. And I have to say, with the changes that they made, I saw no other ending than that, because I was by the end of the episode I was really thinking, how are they going to pull this off with Bill surviving? Because it just seems weird that he would do that. So it made perfect sense for him to kill himself. I cried for the second half of this episode. I really loved the episode in and of itself. It's a good self-contained episode that was very beautiful and sad, but also strangely happy and joyful for The Last of Us. Like, this is not the sort of story that we expect from this universe. So right after watching it, I really liked it and it was my favorite episode. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought, well, this doesn't actually play the role in the story that it needs to play. The point in the game is for Joel to mediate between Bill and Ellie. He becomes this parental figure and he's not forced into that role if Bill is not there. I also don't think it ends up just fitting very well within the world. It's too happy for my taste for The Last of Us. One of the things that I really enjoy about The Last of Us is how sad it is, how gritty and dark it dares to be, and making it lighter. Like, I understand the incentive to make a happy gay story. We don't get a lot of those. And so in that way, it's nice, and it's nice that it exists. But narratively, it doesn't play the same role, and without it, we're losing something. Especially because Ellie is not functioning in the story in the same way as she does in the game. Ellie is a lot more annoying and bratty and bitchy and unlikable, which I find very sad, because what I really liked about Ellie in the game is that she is tough. But she's also very, very sweet and empathetic, and she dares reach out to people in hard times and try to make connection, even though she suffers from humongous survivor's guilt, and even though she's lost so many people, she still has that strength to reach out, which is eventually what she loses, right, because of Joel. So if she doesn't have that to begin with, she can't lose it. We can't have this loss of innocence. If she's a bitchy little teenage brat from the beginning, it's just you're kind of like, why is this girl gonna be the one to melt Joel's heart? After 20 years, Tess couldn't do it. But this teenager who is just so keen to be annoying all the time, she will. Yeah, I'm just... So at the point of episode 3, what we need is bonding between Joel and Ellie, and we haven't had it, but there are still episodes to save it. So we'll see what they do with that. But ultimately, I think that this episode is lovely in its self-containment, but overall, I don't like it. I think it was cooler to have Bill alive. I think it was cooler to have Frank leave him. Also because, here's the thing. Representation is important. I really love seeing queer people on TV, and I like that we're getting more of it. But another thing about representation is that messy representation is really nice. I remember when I was a kid, I was really frustrated that there were so few interesting female characters, and along comes Avatar: The Last Airbender, and there's so many interesting female characters there, right? And I didn't really like Katara because she was just the classical girl that I was kind of tired of, and she ended up sort of as a Mary Sue toward the end. But Azula, like, she's so messy. She's all over the place, and the way that things end with her. But that was what was so great about her. I felt like we'd reached this great moment of female representation because we got Azula. And that's the problem here. We just get a nice little happy gay story, and it's lovely, but it's part of being human, part of being queer, part of being any sort of person on this planet is messiness and fucking up, and people during the apocalypse just probably wouldn't get to be so happy. So that kind of saddens me, that we lose that aspect. Another thing is also that with the way things panned out, we're in the game. What I sense as a player is that Frank would have liked to have had more people. He would have liked to have just more people around him, more connection, and Bill wouldn't have that because he doesn't trust anyone. But in this story, you have Bill trusting Frank, and Frank really changing Bill's way, so you wonder, why did nobody ever move in with them? Why didn't this basically end up being a town like the one Tommy ends up running with his wife? So that ended up also feeling kind of a little bit weird to me. That's not so important, but it's just when you change these things, you have to remember that it's a cascade. You're changing fundamental things in the narrative, and those should change how the characters react and what ultimately happens. It just seems very weird and selfish to leave this place full of so many resources just to rot and not pass it on to any other people who could survive because of it. Kind of very dick selfish, I have to say. Which would have fitted with Bill, because that's how Bill is. Ultimately, we'll see how the show does. I'd love to hear your opinion, because I think it's a hard episode to judge. I think because in itself it's very lovely. But narratively, I don't think it does its part. And I'd love to hear you guys' opinion. And what do you think of Ellie and Joel at this point in the story? Like, where is their relationship? Thank you all for your support on the previous videos. I'm really happy that you like them, and I'll try to make more videos because I actually have time now. Yay!